Welcome to the Perfect Movie Podcast, the podcast where we answer the question.
Is this a perfect movie?
I'm Kalen.
Oh, damn it. You almost did it. I'm Michael, and today we're not answering that question at all.
No.
We're not. You know what we're actually doing this week? Well, I hope you do, because we were supposed to prepare
I'm ready. Bit. I'm waiting for you to say it.
We were supposed to do a little review. Kalen. All right, so popcorn to you. Kalen, what are we doing?
We're doing 2023, right? Catch up.
Yeah, it's like year in review. It's the end of the summer. We've had our big blockbusters all came out. Some of them were a big deal. Some of them were not so big deals. But they all wanted to be a big deal.
Yes.
You know what I'm saying? We're getting to, after the summer, coming in October, there'll be a bunch of horror movies. And then we kind of get into awards season, where all the awards movies and movies that want to be up for Oscar consideration start coming out at the end of the year.
I think usually Martin Scorsese is dropping one.
Yeah.
There's another movie called Napoleon with Joaquin Phoenix that seems like a Oscar bait type of movie.
Yeah, that's a Ridley Scott joint.
Yeah. It's going to be an epic.
It's another movie that they were like, actually, the real cut is 5 hours long. It's the longest movie you've ever seen. I'm so tired of every serious filmmaker being like, why don't I just make the longest movie I could possibly make? I just want to make the longest movie they'll let me.
This is what real movies are.
This is
5 hour long films.
Real cinema is 4 hours of fucking...
It sounds like a nightmare, but I mean, I'll probably watch it eventually.
I just don't need it. I don't need it in my life. I love an hour and a half movie. So I think we can just hop right to it, because I think we're going to cover a lot of movies. So the obvious place to start is the big two, the big movie that everybody had all the memes about and everybody was talking about online and are the most successful movies of the year. At least one is Barbie and Oppenheimer.
Barbenheimer.
The Barbenheimer experience of the summer. Everybody's talking about it. Did you do the Barbenheimer? Hey, kids, men in trench coats are approaching small children on corners and saying, hey, buddy, did you try the Barbenheimer?
Everybody was wearing pink in the Oppenheimer movie.
Yeah. Japan got mad about Barbenheimer. Lots of things happened around Barbenheimer.
It was so controversial. Oh, my God.
It was a controversial time to be alive, but also it was an empowering time to be alive.
Yes.
Guess what? Me and you, Kalen, we both seen Barbie.
Yeah. And we liked it quite a bit.
And we're men.
Yeah.
Kalen, let's talk about Barbie first.
Let's talk about Barbie.
It's the biggest movie of the year.
Barbie is directed by Greta Gerwig. She's best known for Lady Bird, and Little Women. So she is all about the women's. So
being a woman herself.
So Barbie, I think the first thing that really stood out to me while watching it was how impressive it looked. And as far as the set design, the costumes, just the colors, everything, it was just very pleasing to the eye, and it was just very well made, and I appreciated that for it.
Yeah, Barbie really had a hype train going very early on, because it is something that popped off the screen as soon as you saw a trailer. I think from the very first trailer, there's kind of been a growing Barbie hype that led into the summer.
Right. And so, I mean, when you think about Barbie, it's obviously, you're thinking Mattel, you're thinking toys, you're thinking the really bad...
like the 3D Barbie movies?
No, I'm thinking about, that, and I'm also thinking about the movie Battleship with Rihanna and whoever else was in that piece of crap.
Yeah.
So I'm thinking okay, I'm hearing Barbie's coming out. I'm thinking this is probably going to be a giant piece of crap with little care put in.
Lego movie.
Yeah. Well, I mean... That's true as well. I mean, there are some movies that are tasteful and very well made, and this is one of them. So it was quite surprising and pretty cool to see like this movie actually had, it looked like some level of care was put into it. So
Yeah, no, it's a really wonderfully designed movie. It's like just gorgeous to look at. It's really funnily written. And I want to express how much of a damn good time it is before I do the thing that I always do is talk down on the thing that everybody loves, because I'm a contrarian and I guess I'm just going to own it. I don't try to be this way. It's not for the love. It's not for people to think that I'm so smart,
right?
Because that's never what happens. They just dislike me because I'm yucking their yum.
Yeah. I mean, and I'm not the polar opposite of that, but I think I enjoy life a little bit more than you.
That's a big fact.
But this also had my cynical side coming out a little bit in certain scenes and stuff.
I actually think if I rewatch this, I will enjoy it more on its own terms. But I just think I watched it a little later on. I watched it. It'd been out for over a month. I didn't see this when it was at its biggest hype. And a lot of the stuff I heard about it was how like subversive it was and how much it was doing this commentary thing and like it's not just a Barbie movie, it's also empowering and it's also got things to say. And it does. And we're going to go full spoiler zone for the Barbie movie. If you haven't seen it, what are you doing? You know, it's made $1 billion. I think we'd both recommend seeing it despite what I'm about to say.
Yeah.
I think they are it's a really good movie. I want Greta Gerwig. I think she's going to do Narnia, a Narnia movie after this.
That could be interesting.
I like her getting more big budgets. She's an interesting filmmaker and writer.
She'll probably get an Oscar for this, most likely.
Maybe. It's a little outside the spectrum of the type of movies that I think Oscars like to employ, but it does have the edge of it's woman centric,
right.
It's woman focused, right. And that's a very in thing to do right now. This
is the Black Panther, but for women.
Black Panther for blonde women. Let's just back up and maybe tell the plot, I guess. So Barbie lives in her own world, and in Barbie world, everything's like kind of perfect and serene. It's led by Barbie, and like Ken is just this like. He's a man, but he's also just kind of an accessory of Barbie. He's there to please Barbie.
And he's really insecure.
Oh, looks like this beach was a little too much beach for you, Ken.
If I wasn't severely injured, I would beat you off right now, Ken.
I'll beach off with you any day, Ken.
Hold my ice cream, Ken. All right, Ken, you're on. Let's beach off.
Anyone who wants to beach him off has to beach me off first.
I will beach both of you off at the same time.
But you don't even know how to beach yourself off. How are you going to beach both of us off? It doesn't make sense.
Ken? Why are you getting emotional?
You're going to beach both of us off?
Nobody's going to beach anyone off.
Yeah, and Ryan Gosling is hilarious as Ken.
Yes. Barbie is also played by Margot Robbie,
who is also, very funny. Both these performances, the lead performances, and really everyone is just like perfect. Like they're nailing everything they're trying to do. My criticisms of this movie are almost outside of the movie. It's more just like a review of society and what this movie is actually accomplishing.
Right.
I think, rather than what it wants you to think it's maybe accomplishing. But through a bunch of stuff that you just go with because it's a whimsical world. Barbie needs to go to the real world to reconnect with the person who's playing with her because she's starting to have existential thoughts. Barbie's thinking about death. Barbie's,
getting cellulite.
Yeah, Barbie's getting cellulite. Her healed feet are now flat on the ground. So she goes to the real world. She meets up with this mother and daughter combo, America Ferrera, and I forget who the daughter is. And then
the daughter is played by Ariana Greenblatt, and if you've seen the recent episode of Ahsoka, she played the younger version of Ahsoka in that.
Oh,
and I think she was also younger Gamora in Infinity War.
That tracks. Yeah. Perfectly balanced as all things should be.
Yes.
So they end up having to go back. They also, at some point, Will Ferrell is involved. Will Ferrell is the head of Mattel, and his character wants to capture Barbie and put her in a box, and then after that, he's just kind of like, I chase Barbie now.
Yeah. Really unbelievable character.
But everything's so heightened and surreal,
right.
And everything's so absurd about this movie that you just kind of go along with. Even the plot holes of what is Will Ferrell's character doing now? It doesn't matter because we just get to see him run around and be hilarious.
Be Will Ferrell.
Yeah. They end up back in Barbie land. While Ken is in the real world, he learns about the patriarchy.
Yeah.
And Ken brings the patriarchy back to Barbie Land, which Ken's version of the patriarchy is just dudes like mansplaining and dudes that like horses and dudes that wear cowboys hats.
But Ken's Mojo Dojo.
Yeah. And he like turns basically Barbie Land into a frat house.
Yeah.
And it's all about like deprogramming the women who are all believing in the patriarchy at the time,
Right.
And returning everything back to
And who are complicit and willing to serve.
yeah, and then she basically is like making them woke, like literally, like she's basically doing that, and then returns Barbie Land to its normal status. Everything's back to normal status quo. Barbies are back in control. And then I guess at some point we meet Barbie's creator, and Barbie gets turned into a real girl, which is where the metaphor. It's towards the end. It's where all the metaphor and all the like commentary starts to fall apart for me.
Yeah.
And I'm just kind of like, so what are we saying?
Yeah.
Here,
It's hard to take the more serious like themes, especially when this just seems like or it feels like just a giant ad.
yeah,
You know, and so that's when that's the part of me that I'm like, I'm not really totally on board with this, you know.
yeah, and it's all like, I don't know. It just doesn't land the plane. So it really does want to deal with these, like, it says the word patriarchy, like buzzword, and it wants to talk about these more serious themes, but it also wants to like have its cake and eat it too, where it wants to also be an ad for Barbie products, and it also wants to rebrand Barbie to like align to these new more woke ideals. I'm putting woke in big air quotes just because that's another massive buzzword in today's society, and it's like I think that's kind of old satire. So like we go to the real world. In the real world, Mattel is ran by all these men. And Ben Shapiro mentions in his famous Barbie review, because Ben Shapiro hates this review, he's like, actually Mattel is like 5 women and 7 men or whatever on the board. It's not all men. And that's a real, like, the worst person you know made a great point situation. Because, like, that's, for me, that's kind of like tired satire. Like, the commentary of, like, the Mattel is all ran by men and she's got to break out of this patriarchal world doesn't... It's making this more like elevated. It's pointing the finger over there when what the sinister like real world purpose of this movie is for the Barbie brand to sell a bunch of merch and to co-opt these more like progressive ideals as this is Barbie now, because Barbie has had lots of criticism in history, and they kind of air a little bit of that out through the daughter character that Barbie meets, where she's like, she literally calls Barbie a fascist. And again, we're throwing around buzzwords, but it is kind of a scene where they do like air some of the grievances about Barbie, where it's given like a bad, like poor body image for young girls. And
it
like,
makes women feel insecure and,
or just the fact that like for the longest time, it was like blonde white Barbie that's normal Barbie. And then there's other Barbies, you know, and just that enforcing sort of like a white centric ideal of society. And it really wants you to like be like, no, Barbie's cool now. Not Barbie that we see on the screen, the Barbie brand. This is like a whole big exercise to get the Barbie brand.
Don't worry, guys, we're fixing it.
Yeah,
you know?
like to and it's just like, it feels old and tired satire. And I think the example I'd give is like, if you've seen The Boys.
Let's talk #Heroes So White. The numbers are rather startling. 92% of heroes are Caucasian, African American, 6%, Latin and Asian, each 1%. Why doesn't Vought want diversity?
Wow. These are some real hardballs, Maria Menounos. But check your facts. Let's take the 7, for example. We've got A-Train. He's a black man. We've got Black Noir. But he doesn't identify with any race, really, so they're covered. And we have a gay hero.
Really? Who in the 7 is gay?
Queen Maeve. Scoop for you, Maria. Maeve here is a strong, proud lesbian with a beautiful girlfriend, Elena. Hispanic girlfriend. And I, for one, am so proud of her.
The Boys is a show about superheroes who are basically celebrities, and they're treated like real-world celebrities. And in The Boys, there is a Wonder Woman character, basically, and they're trying to sell a relationship between her and the Superman character. Mm-hmm. She doesn't want any part of that, so she comes out that she's a lesbian, and to like foil this corporate plan. And then the corporation says, "Oh, you're a lesbian? That's actually really popular with this demographic and this demographic.
So we're going to flip the script again.
We're going to flip the script again, and we're going to run with this, and
Right.
we're going to actually profit and dehumanize you this way now.
Yeah.
We're going to profit off you and dehumanize you this way now."
Right.
Like, and that's what I wanted Barbie to say. I wanted it to be like to get to that next level where it's like it's not just good enough to point to these ideas and like put it out in this big movie that all these people can see. This is maybe baby's first exercise. Like, this is, who am I to say this? This is the fucking Barbie movie. This is for 10-year-old girls and their mothers. And you know what? It does have some good things to say. And even though it's maybe not perfect commentary, it's still like really well made and gives like maybe gets the ball rolling on some thinking about some ideas that otherwise somebody might not be thinking about.
Right. And so that, I mean, that was really well said. And I think for me, I had a lot of issues towards the end. So you know the scene where they're kind of coming to a resolution and the Barbies kind of gain control back over Barbie Land. And the president's kind of like reinstating herself, and she's saying all this, "Oh, we're going to do this and this and this." And then the Ken characters come up to her and they're like, "Oh, well, can we be a part of your cabinet or whatever?" And she's like, "Oh, no, I can't do that. You're going to have to start at the bottom, just like women in the real world, basically." And I mentioned this to you before, and I was like, this is the problem with society right there, where it's like you have the opportunity for change, but you really don't change anything. You just do the same thing again. So that's the part that really bothered me. And maybe it wasn't meant to be looked at that deep, but that's kind of how I saw it. And it was just like, what are you really trying to say here? And like you said, that's not to take away the obvious, like, real talent that went into making this movie. I mean, the movie looks incredible. It's a lot of fun to watch. But when you get into that social commentary, it can either go one of two ways. And it can either stick and land and be done tastefully, or it can not, basically.
A moment I actually liked is when America Ferrera, the mom character, like talks about how much expectations are on just any woman.
Yeah.
And then at the end she pitches the idea of everyday Barbie, or like whatever it was called, like the Barbie that, you know, might be insecure or might be stressed out or might be overwhelmed today, but it's all right because she's Barbie.
Yeah.
We have to always be extraordinary. But somehow we're always doing it wrong. Like, you have to be thin, but not too thin. And you can never say you want to be thin. You have to say you want to be healthy, but also you have to be thin. You have to have money, but you can't ask for money because that's crass. You have to be a boss, but you can't be mean. You have to lead, but you can't squash other people's ideas. You're supposed to love being a mother, but don't talk about your kids all the damn time. You have to be a career woman, but also always be looking out for other people. You have to answer for men's bad behavior, which is insane, but if you point that out, you're accused of complaining. You're supposed to stay pretty for men, but not so pretty that you tempt them too much or that you threaten other women, because you're supposed to be a part of the sisterhood, but always stand out and always be grateful. But never forget that the system is rigged, so find a way to acknowledge that, but also always be grateful. You have to never get old, never be rude, never show off, never be selfish, never fall down, never fail, never show fear, never get out of line. It's too hard, it's too contradictory, and nobody gives you a medal or says thank you. And it turns out, in fact, that not only are you doing everything wrong, but also everything is your fault.
Like, that was powerful, and that I think is like where this movie really sang, which was more of the like it's kind of cheesy girl power, but like I felt like it was well handled.
Yeah.
It's when we're bringing the patriarchal ideals. It's like the patriarchy is not mansplaining about the Godfather. Like, this is a really funny joke about dudes want to explain the Godfather to you.
Or it was like, one of the Barbies said, she was like, I felt like I was stuck in a dream where I was constantly rewatching the Zack Snyder cut of the Justice League or whatever.
Yeah, it's not dudes mansplaining you through doing Photoshop. That's another one of the jokes. Like, I wanted there to be a little more edge to, like, maybe Ken is pissed that he's been like under the heel of this the whole time. Like, that would be the real flip side of this coin, and that he's like a little more like angry, and like, because the patriarchy isn't like it's not all these like funny examples that we have. Like, those are maybe some symptoms of it, but like, it is a like things that were written into laws, and like, you know, like really like serious and thought out ways that like over time like men have crafted society to keep women out of power or whatever. Yeah. And like, it kind of minimizes all that to be a joke, but also it's a movie for 10-year-olds and their mothers. So it's like, Barbie movie didn't need to be all things to all people. No. But I'm also like, I can't be like, this is the most amazing thing ever when I still have these like reservations about it.
And I can't appreciate that they didn't completely shit on men in this movie either. Because they kind of like, I mean, there was a happy ending for Ken as well, where it's like, Ken needs to find his own identity. And I thought that was really interesting because, I mean, you do see a lot of that in the real world where just men are like, they project their insecurities on women, and especially in relationships and different things like that. So I thought it was done as tastefully as it could have been, and I don't think I was really expecting any more from that, you know.
And I do think that does actually have like a good like in its own, in the way it does lots of cartoony parallels. Like, that is a good cartoony parallel to like women's liberation. All of a sudden women get to the opportunity to like the whole society has been built on the concept that women are subservient to men. Like, our whole nation's society has been, and now they have equal rights for property, et cetera, et cetera. Right. Like, they get to go discover who they are. Mm-hmm. And this parallel is Ken realizes my life isn't determined by my subservience to Barbie. Yeah. Yeah. So, like, it's doing something there, and it's also well acted, and it is really fun. And while we have talked about the weird political, like, machinations of what this is doing for the Mattel Corporation and what it's like doing. Like, ultimately, it is a fun movie that I think almost anyone can enjoy, except for people that are just going to be like, "Oh, it's too woke.
There's too many women. I'm not watching it. There's a trans Barbie."
Unless you're Ben Shapiro.
Well, he doesn't like anything. So,
you know what movie I bet Ben Shapiro thought was the most like important movie of the year?
Freedom. What is Sound of Freedom?
That's second place. 2, Oppenheimer.
Oh.
I was doing a segue. That's a good answer, Kaylin. Good answer. Okay. That was a good answer, but I wanted to talk about Oppenheimer. Also, Oppenheimer, Jewish. Ben Shapiro, Jewish. Just saying. This is like his Black Panther.
Just more genocide.
Oh, man. Okay, so Oppenheimer, you haven't seen it, right?
No, I didn't do the full Barbenheimer.
So weirdly, I did see Oppenheimer pretty early on. It was like the Monday after it came out. I thought that Christopher Nolan can't really write people well. And then he made a movie that is almost 3 hours long, and it's mostly guys in rooms talking. I'm hearing a lot of, like, some people are very confident that, like, this is going to be an Oscar frontrunner, and it very well may be, because it is the type of movie that the Oscars love. It's from a filmmaker that's been, like, really big in the last 20 years that maybe hasn't been recognized as much. It's a historical biopic. So it's all the things that might get Oscar consideration.
I mean, these two are definitely going to go head-to-head for sure.
Yeah. It is good. I will say that. It is good. It's a very interesting movie. Just for me, as just a view of like Christopher Nolan as a filmmaker and how like different this is for almost everything he's made. Like in some ways I was like damn, Christopher Nolan, I really like it when you flip a truck. Like in The Dark Knight, when he flips the truck, and that's like the coolest scene of the last like 20 years.
It's all
like,
practical too. Like, yeah.
Christopher Nolan is the best, one of the best like action filmmakers in Hollywood. Yeah. And this movie has 0 action scenes. There is the bomb test, which kind of is a stand-in for an action scene, but it's not an action.
Also, all practical. From what I've heard,
supposedly, allegedly, I don't really know how they do the effects. I think that's still
he
up
really
in the air.
Dropped a nuke.
It's also got the Christopher Nolan nonsense where it's told out of order and it's edited together. Yeah. And so it's a lot of it is based on these hearings where it's just a hearing to get Oppenheimer's security clearance renewed. Like, this is years post-war. And in some time in the past, Robert Downey Jr. and him have ended up on, like, at first they were friends in the past, but now Robert Downey Jr. is kind of against him. And over time, over the course of the movie, we kind of figure out the whys of why Robert Downey Jr. is feeling antagonistic towards him.
Is it all corporate, like the military-industrial complex kind of thing?
Yeah, I mean, it's all like government. Yeah, it's all like big government agencies, and like this is like Red Scare time. So Oppenheimer's a good portion of this is like Oppenheimer. One of his early girlfriend is like a pretty staunch like communist basically, and he like went to some like socialist parties, and like he was never in the sense that he was overly political man. Maybe he was a little more liberal, but not that he was like fully bought into any of this. He just kind of went along because it was his girlfriend. But that's like things that come back later when they're like, "You're a communist, Red Scare. You're a communist. We don't want to keep you on board." And then the movie kind of becomes about like what were Oppenheimer's motivations through this whole process of building the atomic bomb, and like what does he think about this? It's weird to have a biography that is. I still like don't really know how Oppenheimer felt about a lot of things, despite watching the whole movie, and it is still interesting and riveting. But it's like he's a man that is purposefully like opaque, and he's purposefully like he seems to like distance himself from a lot of decisions, and that's like the way he plays his character is very like the only one I can maybe compare it to is like Lincoln in the movie Lincoln. Like he's a historical figure that is focused on acts and actions that like you don't get a good glimpse of his character, and you also get the sense that maybe he doesn't really know his internal character. Yeah. Like he doesn't maybe he hasn't like consciously interrogated his motivations this whole way. And this is a man that, you know, like he says in the middle of the movie, I am God, I have
become death, the
destroyer of worlds. This is a man that leads to basically 2 like genocides of like 2 whole cities, like millions of deaths. Yeah. And it's like, why did I do all this? Right. What led me down this path? And there are some really powerful scenes where things kind of get surreal, and you get the classic Christopher Nolan just assault of sound, and things get like really deep bass and rumbly. And like there's a couple scenes where like reality starts breaking like behind Oppenheimer, like the set starts shaking and things start like blow away, and then it turns into like a, you know, a total like what's the word, you know, he's having visions. It's a total hallucination. Yeah. Sort of like internalization of the mind. And it's all tricks I didn't really know Nolan could do or do so well, but there's also like just fucking weird stuff where it's like Christopher Nolan still can't like give a woman character anything to fucking do. Like it's just his like you know, it's just like his wife being a dutiful and sometimes shitty like wife and sometimes shitty mother, and like the girlfriend character some, like, that's
sorry, I don't mean to cut you off, some controversial like sex scene in this movie. I've heard, I don't know why it was controversial. I mean, I haven't seen the movie, but I've heard things like people were like shocked that there was like a nude scene in this movie.
I don't know about being shocked. I mean, it's weird because Nolan's weird and he doesn't like, he's not a sexy filmmaker. It's like George Lucas doing sex scenes.
Well,
you know?
I mean, I think about the like Bruce Wayne's relationship with whatever her Rachel. Yeah, there was just no like sexual chemistry going on.
No, it's all about like devotion.
Yeah, and
but
loyalty.
It's not about like sexy.
Right.
No, there is a sex scene. It's fucking weird.
Okay.
But it's not like, no, the sex scene is him and Florence Pugh, and she's like a girlfriend character that at first he's like he might be unfaithful to his wife during his marriage with this other woman that kind of is throughout his life, and they have sex, and she like stands up and she grabs a poem, a piece of poetry, and like grabs it off the wall, and then she gets back on and is like mounted him again basically, and she's like, read it, and he starts reading it, and then she says, no, like really read it, and then he says, I am death, destroyer of worlds.
Oh Jesus.
And it's the most cringe, and there's moments like that where it's just like the most cringe thing ever.
Yeah.
You know, like, so I'm like, there's this, like, that's terrible. Like, why is that even here? And they try to redeem the wife character, and she does actually have this scene that gives her like a little more than just being this kind of like broken woman in the background of Oppenheimer's life. Like, gives her a little bit more than that, but it's still just like, goddamn, Christopher Nolan just can't. It's just dudes. It's dudes all the time. It's pretty good. Like, I'd say it's worth a watch, but it's
What would you rank it on the Nolan tier?
Not particularly high. Like, I don't know.
Okay. Is it above or below what's the other recent one that came
Tenet?
out? Tenet.
People don't like Tenet. I like Tenet.
I did not like Tenet. I don't even think I finished Tenet.
Tenet doesn't make any sense, and that's kind of why I like it.
Well, I felt stupid watching it, and I don't like to feel that way.
No. There's early on, one of the characters has a line where it's like, just don't overthink it, just feel it. And that's him. That's Christopher Nolan just saying, just fucking watch me crash this plane into this airport. And that's what I like to see Christopher Nolan doing. The people talking in rooms, like Cillian Murphy's really great. A lot of the performances are really great. Matt Damon's in it. He's great. I
heard this is probably one of Robert Downey Jr.'s best performances.
Robert Downey Jr.'s great in it. Benny Safdie, the guy that plays Robert Pattinson's brother in Good Time.
Oh, he's in it too.
He's really good in it. David Krumholtz, who's a guy I know from the CBS TV show Numbers. He's also an elf in Elf.
Okay.
He's the curly-haired, like, young one.
Oh, yeah. Okay. Okay.
He's in this movie. Unrecognizable, really great performance.
Isn't one of the Drake and Josh guys
I think so.
Josh Peck or whatever?
What's his name? Speaking of The Boys, Dewey from The Boys.
Yeah, Huey.
Huey from The Boys is in it. Great cast. It's well made and well acted. If you're down for almost 3 hours of dudes talking in rooms, the bomb drop, while not an action scene, is like cool, and you're like, damn, Christopher Nolan knows how to like set the tension of anything. He can make anything tense, and it's really an effective and good scene. It's
still in theaters, correct?
Probably not anymore. Maybe like it's not on digital, so yeah, it's probably showing.
Yeah, because I know I was gonna wait for streaming for this one, but yeah, I will check this one out eventually.
All right, so that was my one. What do you want to go to next?
So I want to talk a little bit about a little movie I watched the other week called The Last Voyage of the Demeter. So The Last Voyage of the Demeter is directed by Andre Overdahl. He is best known for Scary Stories to Tell in the Dark, The Autopsy of Jane Doe, and Troll Hunter. You've seen Troll Hunter, correct?
Troll Hunter, yeah. I watched it as a teenager. I don't remember it very well. It is in a different language. It's in whatever his native tongue is.
I couldn't tell you off the top. But Troll Hunter was a pretty good movie. Watched also Scary Stories to Tell in the Dark. It's like based on some novels of the same name from back in the day. Very well made movie. He does practical effects pretty well. But I will say that I did not enjoy The Last Voyage of the Demeter as much as I would have liked to. The whole setting really appealed to me. So this is set in like, I think the 1700s. It's about a group of sailors who they go on a voyage. They're going to England, and they happen to have Dracula stowed away on their ship. And so that whole setting is like, that's a interesting, I can't fucking talk. Hold up. I just thought that whole concept was pretty interesting. I love anything to do with people trapped on a thing with a monster. So.
I believe it's based on like a prologue in the
actual Dracula novel.
Yeah, in a Dracula novel.
Yeah, so it stars Corey Hawkins as Dr. Clemens. We know Corey Hawkins from the movie Straight Outta Compton. He plays Dr. Dre.
Yeah.
NWA.
Dre.
It's Dre.
$200 headphones.
He's a billionaire though, so I can't hate him. Yeah. He also is in a couple seasons though. He's been getting a lot more work, and I think he's a pretty fine actor. He's pretty good in this movie. Also, Liam Cunningham. If those of you who've watched Game of Thrones, he's got a big role in that. He plays Captain Elliot, and then I'm gonna butcher this, but Aisling Francoisi. She plays Anna. She's like a woman who Dracula like brought with on the ship, and he uses her as like a blood bag, basically, and he's just
blood bag,
constantly sucking her off. So,
pause.
And then Javier Botet plays Count Dracula, and this is not your typical looking Dracula in this movie either. He's like more monstrous, more animalistic. He's not your guy wearing the creepy coat with fangs and shit.
No.
So that was pretty cool, interesting concept. But and you watched this, correct?
Yeah. So some of our early glimpses of Dracula, it's not so much Dracula and more like tall Gollum.
Yeah.
At the beginning, and I was like, "This is not good." And then,
and
then we see more of him, and it's more like he is very animalistic, very like vampiric. It reminds me of the vampire from Midnight Mass.
Yes,
quite a bit. The wings seem to come out of nowhere at the end because I'm like, I don't remember seeing wings on this guy.
I think it was alluded to that he kind of evolves the more he feeds. So his like even his face kind of changes towards the end. He stops looking so much like a golem and more like a bat.
Yeah.
So yeah, that wasn't really explained too well, but
yeah, it's. I think I'm in the same boat as you. Boat because they're on a ship. And this ship's sinking because I was like less entertained than the concept promised.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
Like I was like, this is fun, but there's something missing.
Yeah.
And I don't know what it is.
I think it was tension was missing.
It was pretty good. Yeah, a little bit of tension, a little bit of maybe like characterization of the rest of the shipmates and the crew. And it just seemed like there's a little something missing. But still, if the concept interests you, I'd still probably be like, check it out.
Yeah, it's not a bad movie though, by any means. It's actually quite nice to look at. It's shot very well. I mean, most of it takes place at night, and
you
so
almost can't tell that they are not on a boat in the ocean.
yeah. I mean, though, that there was a lot of practical sets and like all the interiors. It's a lot of detail to it. The performances as well are very solid. I'm thinking Corey Hawkins' character, Dr. Clemens, he has the most depth out of anybody in this movie, and he's played very well. And there's a lot more inner conflict going on than I expected as well. And that was, I mean, even the concept of like race was brought up a few times, and I thought that was handled pretty well considering the time period. I'm sure it would be really hard for any black man to get a doctorate anywhere, you know? And so for this man to actually like, you know, get a job it feels important to him, and he is a rational guy, so he doesn't want to think, oh, this shit is a vampire right away. You know, it's that kind of stuff. So it's interesting. And I think it's well made, but there's some weird kind of choppy editing going on in this. A lot of stuff, I think the issues come from the post-production. And just some of the design, like the design of Dracula is a little off sometimes. It switches from practical to CGI, and it's not as effective as it should be. He smiles a lot for whatever fucking reason, because he's like an animalistic creature, and I guess he's intelligent too, because he does speak at the end. But I wish there was a little bit more of that, and that's what I appreciated like Midnight Mass for, was like the vampire was not just a monster. He was kind of like this like malevolent force, and he was like intelligent and stuff like that. So I wish it kind of leaned into that more. Because that's what I like vampires for, and that's what makes vampires creepy, is because they look like me and you, you know. And,
yeah, it was more a monster on the boat.
Yeah.
Yeah, the kid from Cobweb is in it. He's really good. He's got to do some serious crying. I will say, anytime a vampire person got caught in the sun,
it was pretty brutal.
Pretty brutal, yeah. Pretty intense. Yeah, it's solid. It's just not like spectacular.
No.
It's not like the heartiest recommendation, but it's a good movie.
Yeah, and I think I wanted to shout this one out because it got overlooked. Actually, this is currently sitting at a 49% on Rotten Tomatoes. Again, take that how you will. Rotten Tomatoes is not the most critically accurate thing to look at.
It'd be lying sometimes.
Yeah, but this also came out around the same time as like Barbie and Oppenheimer and Hype, and so this really got overlooked. And I think it almost went directly to streaming. I think it spent a couple weeks in theaters. It might still be in it, but yeah, it hit digital pretty quick.
It'd be a decent alternate kind of like Halloween, spooky season, type of movie. Very gothic, very gothic.
You want them to believe that you're a god? You and I both know that you're not. You bleed like any of us. You sleep in dirt. You feed. Above all else, you feed. You want us to fear you. Underneath, you're afraid. You're afraid of what lies on the other side. As any other living thing.
I love the setting, and actually it sets itself up for a sequel, which it probably won't be getting.
Not going to happen.
And it almost seemed like, are they going to do where Dracula killer from like 1700s
Jack
England,
the Ripper?
Jack the Ripper, yeah, because he kind of had that whole vibe going.
I think it might be.
Yeah.
You might be onto that.
That could have been interesting, but we probably won't ever see it because this movie bombed.
Yeah. Speaking of movies that bombed, I watched Indiana Jones and the Dial of Destiny.
Oh, no.
Oh, hey there, cozy kittens. It's Michael from the future. So this here's going to be a 2-part episode, okay? So y'all going to have to come right around back next week to hear us review Indiana Jones and the Dial of Destiny, among other things, okay? Bye.
Well, do you want to do it?
That depends.
On what?
On you. Hey, this caravan. Not the Rouge, but the Rose.
It's not the same caravan.
It's not the same fight.
So what's the fucking size of the last one?
Turkish. The five's twice the size. And my master needs a caravan. They like to look after me mad. It's a fair deal. Take it.
Mickey, you're lucky we aren't worm food after your last performance. By the Tarts Mobile Palace is a little fucking rich. Calling your mum a tart, I just meant...
Now, save your breath and cool your parts. Hey, look, she wants a heck of 2 roof lights, the stylish house frame furniture, and the Scotter cushions with matching shagpie cover. Yeah. Right. And she's terrible partial to the Periwinkle blue bags. Have I made myself clear, bags?
Yeah, that's perfectly clear, Mickey, yeah. Just give me 1 minute to confer with my colleague. Did you understand a single word of what he just said?